At 3 a.m., I was alone in my ambulance with a semi-conscious woman. The entire village had refused to come with us. They closed the doors, stepped back, and begged me with their eyes to just leave. What I experienced in the next 4 hours on that dark Australian road changed everything I thought I knew about reality. My name is Daniel Carter, and this is the night I learned that some passengers aren't quite human.
10 years ago, I wasn't the man I am today. Back then, I owned an old Suzuki van converted into a private ambulance, serving the rural areas around Warrenbrook, a small town in Victoria, Australia. This wasn't Melbourne with its gleaming hospitals and modern equipment. This was the outback, where the nearest proper medical facility was 4 to 5 hours away on unpaved roads that disappeared into darkness. My ambulance was basic: a stretcher, some medical supplies. No monitors, no advanced life support. Just me, my van, and faith that I could get people to help before it was too late. Some nights my phone never rang. Other nights, a single emergency run would cover an entire month's expenses. People prayed for me. They thanked me with tears in their eyes. That gratitude felt like the real payment, not the cash they pressed into my calloused hands. I never refused a call. Not once. Not ever. That's important to understand, because on this particular summer night, every fiber of my being screamed at me to refuse. But I didn't, and that decision changed me forever. It was well past midnight. My wife and I were sleeping outside in the yard. The heat made indoor sleeping impossible. The old standing fan hummed its monotonous lullaby. My phone was charging inside the house, far enough away that I should have slept through any ring. Should have. But through the white noise of the fan, through the thickness of exhausted sleep, I heard it. That shrill, insistent ringing cutting through the night like a knife. My wife shook me awake. "Daniel, your phone is ringing." I stumbled inside, disoriented, and answered. The voice on the other end made my skin prickle. It was a man, but his voice was all wrong, strained, nervous, like every word was being forced through a throat that didn't want to release them, like he was reading from a script while someone held a gun to his head.
"There's a woman here," he said, each syllable carefully measured. "She's not well. We need to take her to the city hospital. Can you come?" In 10 years of doing this work, I had fielded hundreds of emergency calls. Panic, desperation, grief. I knew them all intimately. But this was different. This was fear wearing the mask of calm. I should have asked questions. I should have demanded details about the patient's condition, but exhaustion made me compliant. "All right," I heard myself say. "I'm on my way." I splashed water on my face, climbed into my van, and drove into the darkness alone. The unease hit me the moment I left my property. I had driven these roads hundreds of times, during storms, during floods, in the pitch black of moonless nights. Fear had never been my companion, but that night, fear sat in my passenger seat, breathing down my neck with cold, fetid breath. The headlights carved narrow tunnels through absolute darkness. No streetlights, no other vehicles, just me and the oppressive weight of wrongness pressing down on the van like a physical force. Around 2:30 a.m., I reached the village, Black Hollow Ridge. I had been here before. It was a small community, maybe 30 or 40 families, but I had never seen it like this. Completely, utterly, unnaturally silent.
Not a dog barking, not a baby crying, not even the chirp of crickets that usually filled these rural nights with life. The silence was thick, suffocating, the silence of held breath, of prey hiding from predators. But near the house I had been directed to, people were gathered in the street. 10, maybe 15, women, elderly folks, all standing motionless in the dark, watching my approach. No one called out in greeting, no one waved. They simply stared as my headlights swept over them, their faces blank and expressionless as masks. A man stepped forward, the same strained voice from the phone, and gestured toward the house. "Park right in front of the door." I obeyed, killing the engine but leaving the headlights on. The door opened, and two women supported a third woman outside. She looked to be in her early 30s, semi-conscious, her head lolled on her shoulders, her feet dragged across the ground, toes scraping the dirt in a sound that made my teeth ache. They laid her on the stretcher in the back of my ambulance with practiced efficiency. Too practiced, like they had rehearsed this exact moment. Then they backed away. I waited for someone to climb in. In all my years, a family member always accompanied the patient, always. It was unthinkable to send someone alone, especially a woman, especially in her condition. But they closed the rear doors with a finality that echoed in my chest. Everyone just stood there, watching me through the windshield with eyes that reflected my headlights like animals caught in the beam. The man approached my window. Up close, I could see the sweat on his forehead despite the cool night air, the tremor in his hands, the way his gaze kept darting toward the back of my ambulance and then jerking away as if looking at it hurt him. "You can leave now," he said quietly. "She's going alone?" I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. "No one's coming with her?" "We're keeping her children here." His words came faster now, tumbling out in a rush. "Her husband works overseas, in Dubai. He's been informed already. He'll meet you at the hospital. Just please, please get her there." Something in his voice, that raw, bleeding terror, made me try one more time. "At least send an elderly woman with us, someone to monitor her condition. What if she—" "No." The word cut through the air like a guillotine blade. Final, absolute. I looked past him at the crowd. So many people, at least 15 able-bodied adults standing right there. Yet not a single one would meet my eyes. Not one voice rose in agreement or disagreement. It felt like everyone shared the same terrible knowledge, a secret so horrifying that speaking it aloud would make it real. They were desperate for only one thing, for me to leave, for me to take whatever was in the back of my ambulance far, far away from them. The realization hit me like ice water in my veins. They weren't worried about the woman. They were terrified of her. I whispered a prayer, "Lord, protect me," and started the engine. As I pulled away, I glanced in my side mirror. All 15 people remained standing in the street, watching until my taillights disappeared into the darkness. None of them went back inside. None of them moved. They just watched and waited. The first hour of the drive was quiet. I kept glancing in my rearview mirror at the woman on the stretcher. In the dim interior light, I could see her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Her eyes were closed. Her face was pale but peaceful. just a sick woman, that's all. Just someone who needed medical attention. I told myself this over and over, trying to drown out the warning bells clanging in my skull. The road stretched endlessly before me, 4 hours of unpaved, isolated darkness between me and Melbourne. No cell phone signal out here, no other vehicles. If something went wrong, I was completely, utterly alone. That's when I heard it. A whisper, so soft I almost convinced myself it was the wind through a crack in the window, but the windows were closed and the whisper had words. Words in a language I didn't recognize. My eyes snapped to the rear-view mirror. The woman was still lying motionless, eyes still closed, but her lips were moving, forming words in that strange guttural language that seemed to come from somewhere deep in her chest. The whispers grew louder, overlapping as if multiple voices were speaking through her mouth simultaneously. My hands tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. "Ma'am, can you hear me? Are you in pain?" The whispering stopped, flooded back into the van, heavy, expectant silence. Then her eyes opened. In the rear-view mirror, I watched as those eyes turned to look directly at me, not at the roof of the ambulance where a semi-conscious patient's unfocused gaze would naturally drift, directly at me. And she smiled. It wasn't a human smile. The muscles in her face moved wrong, pulling too far, stretching too wide, revealing too many teeth. It was the smile of something wearing a human face like an ill-fitting mask, something that had seen pictures of smiles but never quite understood what they meant. "Danielle," she said in a voice that sounded like gravel being dragged across metal. I had never told her my name.
My foot slammed on the gas pedal. The van lurched forward, engine screaming as I pushed it faster along that treacherous dirt road than I ever had before. Faster than was safe, faster than was sane. But sanity had left the building. The thing on my stretcher began to laugh, a sound that started as a woman's laugh and descended into something that had never been human. The van shook, my vision blurred at the edges. Out loud, every prayer I had ever learned as a child came pouring out of my mouth in a desperate torrent. Hail Marys, Our Fathers, Psalms I didn't even know I had memorized. The laughter grew louder, drowning out my prayers. And then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. I glanced in the mirror with my heart hammering against my ribs hard enough to crack bone. The woman's eyes were closed again. Her face was peaceful. Her chest rose and fell with normal, shallow breaths. Like nothing had happened. But I knew what I had seen. I knew what I had heard. And I knew with absolute bone-deep certainty that the people of Black Hollow Ridge had sent something evil out into the night with me. I drove like a man possessed. That 4-hour journey took me 2.5. I didn't stop. I barely breathed. I just drove with my prayers running on an endless loop and my eyes fixed on the road ahead, refusing to look in that mirror again. When I finally pulled up to the hospital in Melbourne, the sun was just beginning to paint the eastern sky with fingers of gray light. I stumbled out of the van on shaking legs and practically fell into the arms of the orderlies rushing toward me. "Patient and back," I gasped. "Semi-conscious woman needs immediate attention." They opened the rear doors. The stretcher was empty. Completely empty. No woman, no blankets, no sign that anyone had ever been there. The orderly stared at me like I was insane. "Sir, there's no one here. Are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" I stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air, unable to form words. They found me later, sitting on the curb outside the emergency entrance, still staring at my empty ambulance. A kind nurse brought me tea. A doctor asked gentle questions about head injuries and hallucinations. I never told them the truth. What would I say? That I had transported something that wasn't human? That an entire village had conspired to send it away? That it had known my name? They would have locked me in the psychiatric ward. I never drove out to Black Hollow Ridge again. A month later, I sold my ambulance to a man from Queensland. I didn't tell him why. I just took the money and walked away from 10 years of my life without looking back. My children are grown now. They have good jobs, families of their own. God has been kind to us. But sometimes in the dead of night, when the house is quiet and I'm lying in bed next to my wife, I hear it, that whispering in a language I don't understand. Those voices that come from somewhere beyond the veil between our world and whatever lies on the other side.
And I remember that smile, too wide, too knowing, too inhuman, staring at me from the rearview mirror. I saved many lives in those 10 years, but that night I learned something the medical schools don't teach you. Sometimes the thing you're transporting isn't trying to reach the hospital. It's trying to reach you. There are thin places in this world, places where the boundary between life and death, between human and something else, grows gossamer thin. Black Hollow Ridge was one of those places, and for 4 hours in the darkness, I carried something across that boundary. I don't know if I helped it or hindered it. I survived. If this story made your skin crawl, hit that like button and subscribe for more true tales from the edge of human understanding. Drop a comment below. Have you ever experienced something that defied explanation? Something that made you question reality itself? Share your story. You're not alone. And remember, the next time you're driving alone at night and you hear something whisper your name, maybe don't look in the mirror. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there.